And this is part 2 of a 2-part video on how to convert a commercial bonsai into basically a raft bonsai. In short, what I did, I took a commercial S-shaped elm bonsai and I took off all the branches on one side, I planted it on its side in a pot, removed some of the roots, had it grow out, cut it back, had it grow out, cut it back, and that is where I left you last time. That was the first almost 2 years, and let's now pop in and see the rest of the 2 years on how I got here. And by the time you have watched this, I have pruned this, and then we'll see each other again. Now, after 2 years, this Chinese elm has grown substantially. This branch has dried out over winter, but it shows also very nicely how this is a semi-deciduous tree in my climate. So we've had frost, we've had nights of -5, -6 this winter for quite a few weeks, and most of the tree has dropped its leaves. But here on the inside, where it was most protected standing underneath the bench, it has kept all the leaves. Here it has dropped the leaves and it is resprouting. And this one branch that stuck out probably caught the wind, just like this one, and has died. I'm removing the dead part completely. Again, leaving us stuck with the bud. And trimming back all these long ends that have served now their purpose of creating thickness and taper in these trunks. This will now aid in the young sprouting of side branches lower down, so that I can in summer indeed do a little bit of work on this. Right now I'm not really thinking styling, I'm just pruning back the excess. Of course, clean up the pot, removing all these dead leaves that have blown in, old residues. This is all places where insects can hide, and we don't want any insects to eat on our trees, so let's reduce this as much as possible. Getting out little weeds, and then it's time to also water this well, because it is quite dry, this plant. Will you look at that? That responded marvelously. Now it is of course time to really clean out all these areas, because here is a side branch but with lots and lots of new buds at that side branch on the trunk. I don't want that. There's little twigs here, I don't want one here. So now I just have to go through the whole tree and clean out all these buds. If there's more than one branch coming, remove everything that's more than one. Deciding, do I want to keep a bifurcation here? No. This is the inner curve, outer curve, remove this one. So I'm really going to have to manually pluck this back. Now here in the top, all these branches, they're not supposed to grow all that strong because I don't want the tree to grow any bigger. Let's remove some of these explosive buds everywhere here. And this is just 3-4 weeks, right? But the masses of growth such an elm produces when it is happy, that's just insane. And you really need to stay on top, otherwise you just get a big bush with lots and lots of branches. Always decide whether you want more extension for a branch and whether you want 2 in one place. This is one and there's one below. Let's remove one. So this is the other one. That one I'm keeping, but I don't want it to extend all that much. All these things in the top I'm holding back very, very strongly, because they will grow significantly, and lower down it doesn't grow all that well. To be honest, quite pleased with how this is turning out, because this is really doing quite well. It is really pushing in the direction that I want, but I now need to stop for a little bit. This is pretty much pruned as much as I want to anyway, but Jelle from Growing Bonsai is releasing a new video in a couple of minutes, and I think I need to be there. I think it's a premiere, so maybe join me. It is about when to prune the bonsai. How well timed. It is right in the middle of the pruning season anyway. Now I had to check, but it really only has been 4 weeks since the last pruning. So this is what elms do, right? Once they're happy, they really start growing. So this is healthy extension grow on an elm. It also means that I'm way too late with pruning, but I'm less mobile at the moment, so I'm forgiving myself. I guess I'm going to get myself a concave pruner, because here in the top it has gotten really messy and I have to go back down a little bit, and I might actually consider taking out a little bit of wire and use all this extension growth to set some more branches. But I'm going to thin this out dramatically because it has exploded. And I was actually now getting to the point of refining rather than growing it out. But we'll see. I'm not walking independently for another month. Might be another session in a month's time. Let me just get started. Now, one of the challenges with the tree is that, of course, over time these branches have come up a little bit, and I really would like this tree to lean more outwards, and the same for this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use tension wires instead of wiring out the whole tree. I've got a little bit of tubing here, and with this pot that has nice little holes on the side, you can quite easily just connect the branch to the side of the pot and then just pull it over. So just loop it around roughly at the place where you want to pull, and then just pull it over. This is actually not enough. I need to go further to the front, and then just something like this. This saves, of course, a lot of coiling, but also reduces the risk of the wire biting in. So now this really is out of the way of this tree. This can grow out, and this is really a lot lower and coming to the side, and this I can just prune to shape. I think with that this can go back into the garden, ready to grow for another couple of months. Let's hope that these two really set in place quite well, and then yeah, just keep on doing what I'm doing right here. Maybe in spring I will find a nice pot and pot it up for you. Well, it's August, and you can see this is now becoming a clip and grow tree. The full development can now just be done by pruning back. I am looking at a way to use these roots. In fact, I would actually like to see whether I can graft something on there. Let's see whether there is still life in them or whether they're dead. This is actually one of the moments when a scratch test does work. So now I can see that the root right here is still alive. So if I allow one of these branches to grow on, for instance this one, I could try to graft it on here, and then here I will have another living tree. Key is, of course, to remove all places where there's more than one branch sprouting from the trunk, and making all junctions into two, and do this consistently throughout the tree, removing growth that has just popped on the trunk and that has gotten overly long. Fingers are a great tool to do this, because you can just grab individual branches and remove them if you don't want them, and scissors are needed when you just want to shorten a branch. But it is getting quite dense in here. At some point I might want to wire some things out again, but for now this still works. Let's hope I don't have to prune all that much anymore this year. And then in fall or winter I'll put it in a nice pot, lifting the whole thing up so that you can see the main trunk and really show off the raft that this is becoming. The seeds are falling. That means we're in fall. It's the end of September, and this tree has grown remarkably. Interestingly, this branch that I here put in this position to graft didn't grow all that well, but this one did grow all that well. So let me prune this whole thing out, then put a graft in place, and then I think we're done for this year for this tree. In fact, I know, because I'm not going to do anything else to the tree this year. Just going to prune back into profile. Nothing spectacular here. Actually, it's so unspectacular. Might as well just switch off the camera and be right back with you. Right, I guess that looks a little bit better now. And for the grafting, I had originally thought of this branch, but now I have this branch which is a lot stronger, and what I'm going to do is, I have a little fork here in this root, because that's what it is a root. I'm going to weave this through the fork. First I'm going to scar the bark in this fork in the hope that there indeed is living tissue, and then I'm going to scar the bark on the branch. I'm going to put them on top of each other, cover it up with cut paste, hold it in place with wire. Nothing more complex than that. This I think is still alive, and this is the donor branch. I'll remove the leaves here so they don't get in the way, making sure not to damage the branch. And then it is key to open up the donor, open up the recipient side, so that callus formation is triggered here. No bark, an open wound, that will mean that the tree wants to heal this wound, right? So I'm just removing part of the bark here. I think you could see already the flap was moving. There we go. Come on. There we go. It is indeed nice and green here. So that means it is still alive, it's still sap carrying tissue. Now this needs to be fairly clean. There we go. And then I said I wanted to put this in there, like this. Okay, then I need to scar open this here in the bottom, removing the bark. This will now trigger, of course, callus formation on the donor branch. Getting these two on top of each other, just like that, so that they will heal together. Now I need to make sure that it can't move away from here. Cut paste over it so it doesn't dry out. And now it is just a matter of waiting for spring. And in spring we can check whether this has taken. It is November, and there's good news and there's bad news for this elm forest. The good news is this branch that we tried to graft is still alive and actually has some little buds here pushing on these branches. And has some buds pushing here on this branch. So the tree is nice and alive. The downside is it is pushing everywhere. Considering how this is not a fully tropical species but also not fully temperate, it is always a little bit tricky in winter. If it now gets really cold, I run the risk of a lot of these branches dying. So I'm going to keep this close to shelter, and I might actually pop it into the greenhouse if it gets really cold over the next couple of weeks. And there is a forecast that it can get really cold over the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Then another thing, of course, I've been saying for a long time I would like to get some buds here on this old root. Now that I've grafted this on here, you're not going to believe it, but I think I see little buds popping. But let's look at that in springtime. But all in all, I think even if this tree now would be completely wrecked over winter, I don't hope so, I hope it doesn't freeze down, but this is starting to become a nice little forest. So it's a nice little example of what you can do with a Bonsai bonsai. And just from that perspective, I really hope that I can get this to recover, stay alive over winter. Then another thing that I have been wondering about, wouldn't this make a much better front if I remove just this? I think this is actually better front for the forest now. Let me just wait till spring, then I'll lift this and I'll find a nice pot for it. I'll plant it up with the roots nice and visible and the original trunk visible. But for now, good news, bad news. It is pushing everywhere, that's bad news. The good news is this is also still alive, so there's a good chance that this is grafted. And if it is not grafted, then I see tiny little dots here that indicate buds might be developing. Remember that image with the frozen off branches? That is what I'm concerned about here as well now. So maybe it needs a little bit of TLC over winter. It's February and I'm pretty upset with what happened to this tree. Not sure whether you can see what happened to this tree, but I had to put it in the shed. It was getting quite cold. It was colder than -10 Celsius. That would be about 14 Fahrenheit. And that is when I protect this. And here, this grafted branch has died. and I was looking at the branch and trying to figure out what is wrong with it, and then I noticed this connection is gone. I know I have mice or voles in my shed, but why? Why would it eat this section and leave the rest of the tree alone? If anybody can tell me, please let me know. Now all the leaves are desiccated, but the main branch still seems to have a little bit of juice in there. So I'm just going to leave this out in the rain. And otherwise, second attempt. It is clear this branch is really dead. So I can take it off, can graft another branch. But also it is early spring, it is repotting season. So I'm going to clean this one up, put a new branch on. But I'm also going to repot, and I'm going to do the repotting first, because otherwise I might bump this after the repotting. The repotting that I'm going to do is just to lift this up a little bit to see how the roots are doing that were forming on the trunk, and then also get a better view of the overall root spread to see how this in general develops underground. There is a lot of roots. Let me just gently start removing some of the substrate on the roots. You see this large slab of roots here, and all of this comes from the original root base. But all of these have come from the scars that I've made earlier. So I can actually now start planting this up really as a raft. Here in front I didn't get a lot of roots, and I'm going to remove a lot of these long roots. So it becomes less dependent on these roots, and these will get a lot more power. And when I say a lot, I really mean a lot. And actually this root ball now starts to get the same weight as the roots on front. Here there's a lot of old soil in there that I didn't remove when I initially planted it up, but this is a good time to do that. So I'm going to take all this wet soil out, and then I'm just going to plant it so that these roots are just barely into the soil. I can really here now work all this wet, oiled, old organic out. Here you see there's a very big root, and I can just cut that off as well, because there's lots and lots of feeder roots. But here all this organics, this all needs to come out now. So you get these nice loose roots again. The rest will come out over time. Every repotting I will take some more out. Let's give this graft another try with this branch. And same as last time, just make a bit of a entry wound here in this piece of root, and then just push this in with a little bit of bark removed at the bottom, and then just leaving it alone for a couple of months in the hope that they fuse. I'm slowly converting a Bonsai elm into a little bonsai in a raft form, and basically this is a recommendation to you: always stay creative. And we're in the middle of April. What we see is a lot of old leaves that are dropping, a lot of young foliage is coming in, and here this is also starting to grow, which gives me promise. If this extends a lot, then this year I might be able to separate it and have a new branch here on top of this old root base. That would be cool. Early summer, this tree is pushing, and I think it is really clear where this is going now, right? This is no longer confusing, this is really starting to look like a raft. This branch, I don't think it has taken yet. I'm going to allow it to just grow for the rest of the season to extend, but let me prune the rest of the tree. Again, you just prune all these long runners in the top quite strongly. The lower branches, just remove what you don't need, increasing ramification, reducing the push here on top. Not rocket science. Welcome back, and there we have it. The final image, the final raft, just a few years from a commercial Bonsai. Now this can further develop, and this branch still needs to graft on, but the basic setup is there. It now can go into a nice pot. Yes, I've said it throughout the video, this needs a nice pot, but this is it for now. If you haven't seen part 1, check out part 1. And otherwise, maybe you just want to see one of my latest videos. This was Jelle, growing bonsai. See you next time.